Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. Do bootstrapper founders have advantages over venture-backed founders? We're going to find out from our next guest here on the Hot Seat with us, Nathan Schutz, VP of Global Fulfillment and Logistics at Blu Dot and the host of the Bootstrapper's Guide to Logistics. Nate, welcome to the Hot Seat.
Thank you, Spencer. It's usually me putting other people in the hot seat as the host, so it's nice to get to be a guest.
No, we're going to heat it up big time for you, sir, so don't you worry about that. But before we do, why don't you just take 30 seconds and give us a little bit of background on what you're doing at Blu Dot, but also what's happening with your podcast.
Sure. Thanks, Spencer. So I'm the VP of Global Fulfillment and Logistics at Blu Dot. It's a modern furniture designer and retailer based in Minneapolis. And we've been working on a supply chain optimization efforts for several years now to get closer to our customers and deliver an excellent customer experience. And so that's my day job. And one of my passions is to just do supply chain at a high level. And then second, I also have a podcast called The Bootstrapper's Guide to Logistics, where I get to talk to supply chain entrepreneurs and founders really all over the world and hear what they're working on and share their stories with the world.
I love that. So let me jump right in there. You mentioned customer experience. Now at Tenney Group, we actually have a dedicated person that's their job, to try to create that experience. But it seems like the standard of excellence for the customer experience is constantly evolving. So how does your group think about that? How do you try to find out what is the bar, and then how do you go deliver on creating that experience for your customer?
I think it starts with understanding what your brand is all about. If you are a Walmart, for example, and you're a high volume, low margin business, the in-store experience that customers expect fits with that brand. If you're a high-end design company, the customer experience should fit with that brand. They're two different segments. They're two different markets. As long as you get the customer experience to match the overall brand, that fit is what matters most. And so you can have different approaches as long as it aligns with your overall brand strategy.
Where do you see folks that aren't able to have that continuity between their brand and the actual experience? I mean, what's the issue in that situation?
One, it's very, very hard first, especially in the furniture industry, which is big and bulky. That is a very challenging supply chain to manage, independent of going and delivering, white glove orders into people's homes. You're in their private home. It's
Right.
a very intimate and safe place for them. And so if they've come to your store, for example, and they have a very positive experience, you're not trying to replicate that with a delivery happening inside their home on a day that they maybe took off of work. And that can be a nerve-wracking experience, having strangers in your home and wanting to have that final delivery experience be equal or better to the experience they have with you on the web or in your store is something that we work towards relentlessly.
No, I think that's a good word. And the goalposts are always moving, right? In terms of what the customer wants, and that continues. That's what keeps it interesting, I'm guessing.
It is, and what the customer wants changes over time. I think for a long time it was all about speed. Amazon brought that into our consciousness that hey, you can have something in 24 or 48 hours. And we began to want and crave high-speed deliveries on everything from blenders to, groceries. And now as the world has matured and e-commerce has become commonplace, I think one of our positions is that the customers are actually beginning to value certainty more than speed. If it takes a week to get here or 2 weeks to get here, that's okay, but be there when you said you're going to be there and
Right.
have a delivery window that you can hit, even if it's a little bit wider of a window than a very narrow and precise window that's fast, but you only achieve it 30% of the time. Why set up the customer to be disappointed by trying to overly optimize for speed when the consumer is saying, I'm planning my day or my week around this project in our house to refinish a living room, for example. I want to be able to know that it was done well on the first try, and then I can go back to my life.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like it's the way that the world has changed, both in terms of our expectations, the consumers and the customers, they're communicating feedback differently. So how has that evolved as far as like, how do you know that you are delivering on your promise? What does that look like compared to what it looked like maybe 5 years ago?
I would say ongoing and constant data collection,
Mm-hmm.
measuring customer sentiment, engaging them in the process, asking them questions over and over about what worked and what didn't, measuring it, and then setting a goal that's higher than that year after year. And we've been on a 4-year journey of doing just that. And we're proud to say that we're now offering a delivery experience with survey results that are rivaling companies like Apple.
Wow. So I'm curious from an engagement standpoint, what percent of your customers are actively providing that feedback? When you're giving them the opportunity to do that.
It varies. It depends on sales channel. If it's a B2B segment or a residential segment, if it's going through retail or if it's going through e-commerce. So the specifics get different by channel. And then human nature is to share bad news more readily than good news.
Of course.
And that's just in our human nature. We leave bad reviews more than we leave good reviews at restaurants, for example. And so we're trying to do two things simultaneously. One is increase the level of feedback that we're getting, and then make sure that we're activating on whatever feedback we are getting, that the signal is really high value, and that there are things that we can either change in how we present information online to a potential customer, or how did we actually complete the final delivery. And they told us, here's what happened. They were on time. They were courteous. They did exactly what we asked them to do, and the delivery was flawless. I mean, we want people to tell others about the delivery experience being so good as much as the product being good. That's how we know that we're on the right path.
I love the distinction that you kind of slipped in there, which is like the data gathering plus activation equals impact. If you take the activation out of that, the data doesn't really have much use if you're not activating around it, So I think that's an important takeaway for those listening that are getting good at getting data, but maybe not quite, getting to the point where they're activating it. I hope that encourages them.
Data is the means to the end. It is not the end. It should give you insights that you can then apply to create a different outcome. If you're just wanting beautiful dashboards, that's not the goal. The goal is to improve the customer experience.
That's right. So let me transition from the customer experience. Let's talk about your experience with this podcast, some of your passion, a shared passion, in fact, that we both kind of have around this best practices and working with founders. So tell us about the genesis of your podcast and why you're passionate about it.
I think the beginning part of it is I'm fascinated with entrepreneurship, in part out of my own desire to one day be an entrepreneur. It's something that I aspire to, and yet I'm fairly risk averse. And so this is an avenue that I get to scratch that itch by being around lots and lots of entrepreneurs. So that's one part of why me to do this is I just love the concept or the topic. Second, I love supply chain. I've been practicing for, oh gosh, I'm going to date myself now, nearly 20 years. I went to school for logistics as my undergrad, and I have always been fascinated with it. So to have the chance to combine entrepreneurship and supply chain, all I needed was the right vehicle for it. And through good fortune and an exchange on Twitter 2.5 years ago, found myself working with the FreightWaves team to launch a new concept for a show called the Bootstrapper's Guide to Logistics. And did the show with them for a little over a year, and then in true bootstrapper form spun it off, and now it's completely independent, and it will make it or not make it depending on what I'm able to do on my own. And the combination of all those things results in just storytelling. And storytelling has been happening around campfires for tens of thousands of years and in families. And the podcast is the modern day campfire for business. And so it's just such a natural one-on-one conversation that I love hearing the personal stories behind why people choose to take this path that is so different than most, and face all odds and adversity, and wake up every single day and take punches in the face and then have mountaintop moments, and then the next day the roller coaster is back on the bottom. And that entire experience is so fascinating to me that I'm honored that I think at this point nearly 60 founders have said, Nate, can you help me share my story with the world? And I'm glad to be able to do it.
I love that. So let's lean in a little bit. I'm curious of those 60 founders without hurting feelings or whatnot, but I'm curious. I mean, you're on your own journey. What tell us about a story that affected you, that moved you in some way, and why?
Oh, there's so many, but the what they have, the ones that really move me have in common. I think of Mike Malikov. He's the founder of Carpool Logistics in Atlanta, and he grew up in Eastern Europe during the fall of the Soviet Union, and his parents wanted a better life for him, and so when he was 14 years old, they sent him to America, and he had an opportunity at a school where he could go full time, but he didn't speak a lick of English, and he left his mom and his dad behind, came to a new country, didn't know anybody, and learned the language, finished school, somehow found his way into logistics, came up with a brilliant idea for moving vehicles around the country, started that company, and is now, I don't want to say wildly successful, but he has done something that so few people are able to do, and that it's a combination of, it's this rags to riches story, but it's more than that. There's this leaving home, leaving the safety of your family, and um, in the hopes that one day you can create a better life for your family. So to me, that is so insanely inspiring. That
Yeah.
so that's one. Another one is Lena Camargo. She started Pearl Trans in South Los Angeles. She was the daughter of a maid, a housekeeper or house cleaner. And so when she was a child, she had to go with her mom and help clean other people's houses for a living. And great student in school, got a full ride to college. But in her culture, women didn't go to college. And so her father told her she couldn't go to school. So she actually walked away from a full ride to university, something that would just is hard to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than being bitter about something like that, she applied herself. She got into logistics and started a company. And now her company does literally tens of millions of dollars a year in home delivery in Los Angeles. And again, the commonalities are the family is the origin of so much of it. And the special relationship that most of these entrepreneurs have with their mom and their dad, along with this deep internal resilience and imagination that anything is possible, that to me those are two of the stories that can get me really choked up, because I've
Yeah.
had a life of relative privilege. I grew up in a middle class family. Both parents were there. Nothing really ever happened in our lives. It was very safe and predictable, and any opportunities that I've had later in life, I can reflect back on and say, I started on third base. I had so many privileges that so many other people don't. And so I have so much respect for those who have had a harder path and have achieved so much. So how can you not
Yeah.
just marvel at the universal appeal of amazing people?
I think why I get um, similarly affected around these stories is because you hear there's a growing narrative in our country that would have you believe that um, that the American dream has gone by the wayside, and but when you hear stories, and it specifically with some of these, like there's so many Eastern Europeans that I've
Mhm.
met in this industry that just turn that whole narrative on its head, and it's just, to me, it's just like it's a tremendous encouragement to know what's available in our country still for those that identify the opportunity and then have imagination,
Mhm.
have resilience, and then do what others won't. And
And
and and
there's
I think,
zero
yeah,
sense of
just
entitlement. They started oftentimes with so little that they never got a sense of the world owes me anything.
yeah,
And the the American dream is dying narrative, I think, stems from a lot of people who think that the glory days are behind us. And they're not. We've just grown very comfortable and bloated and
yeah,
complacent. And so it's easy to think that that's not possible anymore. And yet
Right.
every single day, there are amazing stories of people doing amazing things that have a chip on their shoulder just to prove that
Yeah.
they can do it. And like, that's, again, I use the word inspiring a lot, but
Yeah.
I'm inspired every time I get to share one of these stories.
No, I love that. Well, speaking of doing amazing things, Nate, you and I are talking about what you started by getting these founders together um, in an iron sharpens iron type format. I love it. Tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing and why.
Well, first, I'll start with I have to be careful not to romanticize entrepreneurship. These stories that I just shared are very compelling, and they're somewhat scarce too. The
Mm.
other side of entrepreneurship is what Ballast and this founders group is oftentimes about. With all of those rewards that entrepreneurship can offer, also comes immense pressure, isolation. You can't talk to everybody about what you're going through. You're the founder. You have to present confidence externally. You can't talk to your team members that you're worried about making payroll because they're the ones counting on you to pay their bills. And um, their spouses are actively supporting them behind the scenes. And the only thing harder than being a logistics entrepreneur is being married to one. And so there's all of these other sides of entrepreneurship that don't get talked about a lot. And so hearing them share their stories on my podcast and then developing friendships with them and them opening up even further and saying, hey, I'm really struggling, actually. Um, I'm having some mental health challenges. I might be having some addiction challenges. And for whatever reason, you're the person I'm telling this to. And realize that there was an opportunity to provide real help to them in the form of just connecting them with other people who were in the same place or had been in the same place before. So 2 years ago, I got a Zoom call together with, I think, 4 founders, and they had all hinted at some of the same things. And I said, you just told me you're working on this issue, and you just told me you solved that issue.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if you talked? And I didn't know what would happen, but the first month they talked for 2.5 hours on a Zoom call. And so we decided to do it again a month later, and then it was 6 founders, and then it was 8, and then it was 14, and then it was 20, and realized that really the best support for founders is other founders, somebody who knows what it takes to achieve the highest highs and survive the lowest lows. And community, kind of like the campfire story, we are drawn to people that are like us or that have shared experiences to us. And supply chain entrepreneurship is no different. And if you get the right mix of trust, camaraderie, and chemistry together, you can find your people. And that's what Ballast has become organically over the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the heart of it too. And then, and quite honestly, where our worlds intersect, people ask me like, well, can you help me create value? And I almost will always say, Nate, well, are you in some kind of best practice group?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is like the most effective thing that I can recommend that usually costs very little and provides extraordinary results just by having that backline or that back channel to be able to kind of float ideas and like, hey, do I need to reinvent the wheel here? Has anybody ever done this before? And I think that in itself is like, hey, like before I go start, providing and installing solutions around things, let's go see if we can put you in a group that can unpack and unearth a lot of these solutions for you very cost effectively. And to your point, and in the process, provide the community and the camaraderie that is so critical over the long term for entrepreneurs to have access to. So for that reason, I'm so appreciative of what you're doing. And not only is it just a support, it directly affects business value. And that's what I'm passionate about.
It does. There has to be a Venn diagram overlap of those two things. It can't just be a support group, although there's value in that. It can't just be a networking group, although there's value in that too. And it can't just be like a conference that everybody goes to and watches a presentation on best practices. What's really helpful is when you say, a recent example, I've reached a plateau in my sales program. We've gone through all of our A contact list, our B contact list, and our sales have plateaued. So I'm thinking of doing an affiliate sales program or a referral fee program, a commission only sales program. What do you think?
Right.
Well, it turns out that a lot of entrepreneurs have approached that same question, and there are some guardrails you should put up if you want to do that. If you get it right, you
Yeah.
can have a really well incented external sales partner that wins if you win. That's really clearly auditable, and it isn't a ton of math, and is a high ticket based on a high ticket price with a differentiated product. That's where a referral and an affiliate sales program can work. On the flip side, if you're a truckload broker and with 9 employees and you don't have a differentiated offering and you're trying to build a commission only sales program based on net revenue, you're going to have an accounting nightmare. They're not, your sales partner isn't going to have any clue how to sell what you sell. And so in that case, it's just a giant waste of time. Well, wouldn't it be helpful to know that if you're a founder and be able to talk to other people that have built those kinds of programs? So we did 2 weeks ago, we did an hour roundtable on this one topic. And we had 20 founders saying, here's what worked for me. Others saying, here's what didn't work for me. And we condensed all of that communal knowledge into like 4 slides and said,
Wow.
new founders, if you're about to do this, here's what to do and here's what not to do. Save yourself the time. And we're not a free group, it's a paid community. And somebody I've heard say to me every once in a while, I can't afford to be in the group. And I'll say, you can't afford not to be in the group.
Mm-hmm.
The money and the time that you're leaving behind by not getting to the answer more quickly, that's
Right.
the value. Somebody else can help you avoid a lot of heartache because they've tried and failed. They know the best practices. You wouldn't go to a gym not knowing how to exercise and say, I'm just going to try every machine and see which one works.
No, I've seen a lot of people that do exactly that, Nate. So, um, noted. I understand what you're trying to say, but no, I love it, and obviously, you're already paying for it in some way by not having access to what else is going around you, and so
Unquestionably.
so I'm curious, as I share with you, my dad used to facilitate best practice groups, and I had the opportunity at a young age to observe some of those. My dad would always say, like, he's just aggregating all of these insights, and he almost felt guilty because he was learning so much. And I'm curious, like, how do you feel about it? And then maybe what advice could you pass along to some of our entrepreneurs and founders in our audience? Like, what are some of the key takeaways if, hey, someone is committed, I want to be an elite entrepreneur? What are some baby steps that you can share with them?
First is understand the role that self-awareness plays in your own journey. Every one of us has blind spots. Every one of us has biases and different things that make us who we are. We're walking contradictions every single day. We can be both incredibly humble and incredibly arrogant simultaneously. And so the first place that I encourage founders to go is inward and say, am I the kind of person that's willing to receive insights from other people? Do I have a posture of humility that I don't actually have all the answers?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is yes, then a best practices group is a great vehicle for you to be able to avoid some of those mistakes. Other people take the Roomba approach. It's like the Roomba vacuum. They'll just go until they hit a wall, and then they'll change directions and then go until they hit another wall, and they'll eventually cover the whole floor, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of bumps to the head. The ones that are self-aware and say, I'm wise enough to know that there's a lot that I don't know. If that's the raw material of a founder that you're dealing with, you're going to have a really, really bright future. If you're not, you're going to still learn. You're just going to learn more expensively. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that to me
No,
is
I think that's good. I mean, that's a life skill too, beyond being an entrepreneur. I think that could save a lot of therapy sessions over the next few decades just by embracing that simple truth there, sir. So so what's next? What are you excited about?
I'm excited to see this community grow in particular, but one, it's become a passion project of mine, and is something that I've found a degree of my life's work in. It capitalizes on all of who I naturally am and the things that I'm curious about in the world. And I didn't know that there was a way that you could make money doing that. And so that I'm excited about that. But even more so, I'm excited about the next wave of entrepreneurship. I think bootstrapping is back in fashion. Venture-backed companies, man, they got a lot of cash flow, or they had a large cash reserve. Most of them spent all of it.
Yeah.
And now they're shifting towards, hey, we need to be profitable instead of just grow the top line. And bootstrapping is the oldest form of business. Starting with very little, optimizing it, building something, and doing that responsibly over a period of time. And so I'm excited to go backwards, to go back to the past of something that's durable and long lasting, that adds values to families and does all of that. And coupling that with not going it alone.
Yeah.
There's more and more people that are saying every year, this is a hard journey. And whether it doesn't have to be entrepreneurship, this could be any kind of club, it could be a sports group, it could be a religious group, it doesn't matter. Connecting with other human beings around a shared set of values and a shared vision or purpose of some kind, whatever that might be. I think we're desperate for connection in this modern age. And to see all of those forces come to work in an industry that I love, around people that I'm passionate about sharing their stories, I'm like a kid in a candy store. And I know that you, Spencer, you share so much of that same appreciation. One, because you're the second generation of your company. And so there's this huge family element to what you do every day, and you see all the same things. So can I flip the script and ask you, what are you most excited about?
I just get excited about the people I get to work with. I think that's the main thing. I'm just fascinated and honored by who's in our industry and what's required. Just the table stakes, just to be in this arena is pretty high. So just the caliber of people, as far as what they've had to do, if they're in a conversation with us, just that in itself is pretty remarkable. Of like, as far as the level of respect I'm bringing to just an initial conversation for them, it's pretty awesome. And then I think that for us, what we really get excited about is once we help people exit this industry, is having the front row seat to watch them once to capitalize on that liquidity event, and how so many of them use that to profoundly impact others. And that's where I get energy. I think that's where our work gets new meaning, and that's what keeps us coming back, willing to put our head in a wall and and come back for more punishment in a very unforgiving industry. So I want to come back to this one thing that you said, because I teased this at the beginning. What are the advantages of the bootstrapper versus the venture-backed founder?
First and foremost, it is control over your own destiny. You get to choose a vision and pursue it over the long term because it's something that you have conviction in, versus here's a pile of money that we need to make a massive return on very, very quickly, growth at all costs. The founder may start off really excited about their vision, but if you talk privately to a lot of venture-backed founders, they'll share there's another side to it, that I feel like maybe we started going on a side quest. This isn't what I originally set out to build. I didn't fully understand all the ramifications of taking that giant pile of money up front. And bootstrappers, they're not going to get the PR. They don't want the PR typically. They're happy doing the work quietly in the background, adding value and building something that they're going to be proud of as a legacy. And to have agency over oneself and the choices that you make, that is the ultimate privilege. And
perhaps the ultimate advantage.
It is.
As a little counterintuitive there. All right, I'll do a little wild card. Before we wrap things up with that, sir, tell us about how folks can learn more about the work that you're doing, both through your podcast and through your best practice group.
Sure. So just recently we have a website. This is new. I'm bootstrapping too. We have joinballast.com is a link to our founder group. You can also check out logisticsfounders.com. They'll both take you to the same place. And then we release new episodes of the Bootstrapper's Guide to Logistics every Thursday on Apple and Spotify. You can follow our page on LinkedIn. We do a lot of promotion there. And we've recently gotten into video, so now we're adding videos on the LinkedIn page as well. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there. It's Nate Schutz. You can also look up Logistics Twit. There's a whole nother story behind that we can get into another time. But those are a few of the places you can find out more about what we're doing.
I love that. So my wild card question for you, sir, is we've been talking about entrepreneurs. I don't know if you're studious or not. You look studious. But like, I'm going to go out on a limb, say that, and assume that you've read a book or two. But I'm curious for those that need a break, that love logistics, but need a break from time to time. What is a fun read that has nothing to do with business or logistics that you've read in the last year or so that you would recommend to our audience?
I'm going to go with the science fiction book, Seven Eves. It is
Seven Eves.
I like science fiction, and I like books that span massive timescales of thousands of years. And Seven Eves does that. It's humanity is trying to survive, and so they have to leave planet Earth, and a small group does, and then they go off into interstellar space, and thousands of years pass, and it's a space soap opera on one hand, and then you get to see I love anthropology and philosophy and science, and so those are it's a great book that encapsulates all of those, but is still ultimately about what does it mean to be human, and look up at the stars with wonder.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to look on with wonder with what you do next in this beautiful industry star. I want to thank you for joining us in the hot seat, Nate. We'll see you next time.